As the Trump administration is ending Chevron's license to operate in Venezuela, which allows the Maduro regime to export oil to the U.S. Oil experts are a financial lifeline for the Maduro regime. Chevron producing about 220,000 barrels of oil in Venezuela every day. Joining us now, Ryan Berg, director of the Americas program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Ryan, thank you very much for being with us today. You study Venezuela. How significant is President Trump's decision?
Well, thanks for having me on, Jose. This decision cannot be underestimated. It's very significant. You said it yourself in the opening. Chevron produces well over 200,000 barrels of oil per day in Venezuela on average. The country only produces about 850 to 950,000 barrels of oil per day, depending upon the month that you're looking at. And so this is 20 to 25% of Venezuela's overall production. So much so that Venezuelan economists were starting to refer last year to el efecto Chevron in Spanish, or the Chevron effect, how Chevron is actually revitalizing our oil industry and therefore our economy with its partnerships with PDVSA, the state-owned Venezuelan enterprise. So this is very, very significant that the Trump administration is deciding to end GL-41, which is the license that gives Chevron the ability to operate in Venezuela.
Ryan, how important is it for the survival of the Maduro regime to have this pipeline into the United States?
Again, very significant, Jose. The regime has two main sources of revenue. One is on the licit side, the other is on the illicit side. On the illicit side, we've heard tons about the illegal gold mining and obviously drug trafficking, and that will continue. But on the licit side, Venezuela is a petro state. Well north of 90% of Venezuela's GDP is tied up into its oil industry. And Chevron was really the company that was driving much of that production increase forward. Every single year since this license was put in place in 2022, Chevron and Venezuela's oil economy has grown by over 10%. This year, the estimates in January, Jose, were around 17%. And again, this was majority based on Chevron's expectation that it was going to be able to increase production. So cannot underestimate the significance of this to the Maduro regime's financial lifeline and its ability to stay in power through that financial lifeline.
And support other regimes in the area, including, of course, its primary client, Cuba, the regime there that has been in power for 64 years plus. Ryan, can you explain to us how is it that a country, Venezuela, that has the largest oil reserves in the world still has an economy that is in shambles, and you have millions of people that have left that country over the last 20 years, leaving what is a very dire situation? Can you explain to us that dichotomy?
Well, it's a long story, Jose, but it basically boils down to bad economic policies, expropriations, poor private property rights, and classic case of populism, where the state took over certain industries and used a lot of those state-owned industries as slush funds to fund personal projects and other types of social programs, to the point where Venezuela's production, which was at well over 3 million barrels of oil per day when Hugo Chavez took power in 1998, was already down in the 1 million oil production per day range when Maduro took over, and is now well south of that. So when you have so much of your economy tied up into the oil industry, and the oil industry is not doing well, overall, you're simply not going to have enough money to sustain some of these programs that were being expanded. And as I mentioned previously, what was produced in its place was basically illicit sources of revenue. The regime going into things like drug trafficking and gold mining and a whole host of other unsavory things.
Ryan Berg, I thank you very much for being with us this morning. Appreciate your time.